the way we tried to structure this, the program committee got a lot of feedback, and so we do have some science talks, but we also found that the industry has asked and attendees have asked for other talks about things like marketing, regulations, and dealing with things like the media, and in this case, an alternative income stream. So we're going to take a panel here of folks that Leslie Sturmer has assembled as the moderator and talk about other ways that oyster farmers can make money. So I'll hand it over to Leslie.
Thanks, Bill. All right, good morning. Come on in. Let's get started. All right, I'm not Bill or Beth, so you don't have to take out your phones, and you've already kind of addressed this one question, but let's just see another show of hands. Come on in. So how many of you here are oyster farmers, oyster growers? You produce oysters? Do you want to produce oysters? Let's see that show of hands. Good enough. Now, in addition to your oyster farm or hatchery, how many of you have another business that's related to your oyster farm? Let's see that show of hands. Okay. So that basically is the definition of alternative revenue streams. So you're diversifying your income by creating new products, services, programs, events, with the intent, hopefully, to increase your revenue and income, and sometimes that's not the reason for doing so. So we're going to hear from a bunch of folks here about why they diversified their business, how they did it, and it's a variety of reasons, a variety of efforts. Let's see if I can move forward here. Yep. And they're going to explain what their businesses are, why they did it, is it working, what's the investment of time, is it worth all that effort and money. So here's the lineup. Starting here with the homeboy is Ryan Anderson from Little Moon Oyster Ranch in Grand Isle, Louisiana. Then we're going to go over to Florida, Pensacola, with Grayson Bay Oyster Company. That's Brandon Smith. And then up the coast, we go to NC Oyster Company. We have Connor and Alyssa McNear out of Hampstead, North Carolina. Mike Congrove is here from Grinstead, Virginia, and that's Oyster Seed Holdings. And then we're going to go all the way over to the West Coast with Adam James from Hama Hama Oyster Company out of Lily, Washington. So I'm going to have each one give their presentation, and if you don't mind, we will then have a panel discussion with your questions and answers. All right, starting with you.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Ryan Anderson, and I run an oyster farm in Grand Isle, Louisiana, which is, thank you. It's about 2 hours south of here. It's really home to where most of the aquaculture farms in Louisiana are centered. And I guess my alternative source of income is really just adjacent to the oyster farm. It kind of started out of necessity. When I got started, I didn't have too many oysters a couple years ago. Didn't really want to put too many in the water because I didn't know how much I could handle. And I wasn't selling to restaurants, so what I started to do with the little oyster amount that I had was just market myself as either private catering, restaurant pop-ups, or even like doing shows that were like 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. on the sidewalk shucking oysters, and it kind of just bloomed from there. But it's become a huge part of what I do with Little Moon, and comprises like at least half of my revenue, that to wholesaling the oysters to restaurants. And really, there wasn't a whole bunch of strategy. I'd worked in hospitality for most of my life, so I had a bunch of connections in New Orleans already to either restaurants or bars. Thank you. I had a bunch of connections to restaurants or bars in the city, and friends that just were interested in aquaculture and interested in the oysters. So it was kind of haphazard at first. People would be like, come by the bar and shuck some oysters and we'll figure it out. And it works, and I think that the cool thing was that, one, it allows you to platform your oysters when you're interfacing with the general public in that way, to branch out into doing different, catering events, weddings, whatever. So most of my marketing I run through Instagram, and then really just take DMs or email inquiries for events, and that's essentially it. I do weekly pop-ups in the city, so I'll shuck at either a wine bar in the side of town that I live at, or a wine bar across town, and then usually now it's like 2 or 3 weddings a week that I do. And it's great, again, for a lot of reasons. One is that you make a higher margin off of a single oyster that you sell. And then 2, it really just allows you to connect with the general public or connect with your community that you're selling to in the way that they get excited about the oysters and then they go and try to find them at whatever restaurant you're wholesaling to at the same time. It can also just be more fun. Like I have a better time talking to people about the oysters who are interested, and especially in Louisiana, we have a huge history of wild Gulf production oysters. And everybody knows the wild Gulfs are a little bit bigger. They're great for char grilled, they're great for raw, but I think that the market in New Orleans especially is switching to wanting a more boutique, kind of smaller size oyster. So people are interested in talking about that in a state with such history, who are only really accustomed to the larger oysters. So that's kind of it. I, on the side, also sell a bunch of merchandise, which I'm sure that everybody does. If they're an aquaculture farmer, it's a fun thing to go out and see people wearing your hats or shirts. Yeah, that's about it.
Again, we're going to hold off questions, so we're going to move on to Brandon. Brandon,
you did great by not looking at it. All right, is this on? Hello? All right. First, I want to give a shout out to this guy who's wearing his extra tough boots. I'm Brandon. I'm the owner of Grayson Bay Oyster Company in Pensacola, Florida. And then now I'm also the owner of Emerald Coast Oyster, which we've shortened down to Eco Oyster, which is a traveling craft raw bar. And so this is how we began to diversify our revenue and broaden our local influence. I was not the founder of Emerald Coast Oyster. The founder is here. Thomas Derbez, where are you at? There he is, back there. Our lives have been pretty intertwined over the last few years, with him working on my oyster farm, him starting Emerald Coast Oyster, which was not intended to be a catering company at first. But after hurricanes and seeing mortalities, his direction changed. So he began catering and supporting local Florida and Alabama oyster farmers at catering events. He took over some lists and some connections from, I think, Bill Walton's Wandering Oyster Catering Company at some point. In 2023, I was extremely excited for Thomas to become our county Sea Grant agent. We were sad to see him leave the farm and his shucking skills, but he approached us about maybe taking over Eco, and we saw it as an opportunity to go ahead and expand what we were doing to generate more revenue. Because we've had a couple rough years with mortalities and closures, and still to try to generate revenue. And the good thing I'll say is by keeping the company separate, we're able to use other oysters without question. So if for whatever reason we have some production shortfalls or closures and we have an event, I can pick up another local or regional oyster and be just fine, and nobody's going to really question us on why we're not using Grayson Bay. We had always thought about doing catering, but Thomas was doing it first, and so there was not enough room for probably 2 oyster catering companies in the Pensacola or the Emerald Coast area. There is one in Panama City. And some people may know 38 Oyster. He travels all over the place. But, the good thing is with Eco is there was already a brand presence and a network. He already had the catering license, the commercial kitchen, all that stuff that I didn't have to try to do while trying to also manage the farm and that other stuff, because I do all of the work. I'm on the farm. I'm on the boat. I'm doing a lot of the processing. Meeting my distributor at 4:30 in the morning, before work. I'm a Little League baseball coach. All things. I'm all things. But like yesterday, I did a double catering event yesterday at a shooting shooting range. It was a benefit. We did that all day. I packed up and I headed here last night. So, but it does. It definitely allows you to generate more income. I am able to pay Grayson Bay a higher price for the oyster than I would through the distributor. I'm also able to sell a lot of oysters in a short amount of time. We have a really good relationship with several breweries along the coast, from Pensacola to Navarre. And we do it pretty repeatedly. We do an oyster beer every year with one of the breweries. That ends up being a big pop-up every year, and so that generates a lot of immediate return. And then obviously the socials, the weddings, they really between like October to December, and then again in the spring is when everything really books up. But you just got to find your niche. Will we continue? I think we will for the foreseeable future. Because having that connection, talking with the people, it really, like yesterday, there were people like, oh, where are these oysters from? I said, my farm. And they're like, what? Like, yeah, I grew these in Pensacola and brought them over here, and I'm shucking them for you. That connection to people, really, they enjoy that a lot. So, and then we engage with a lot of other local businesses, and just networking, and so far it's been working really well. So thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Bill, for all those previous connections. But thank you so much.
All right, we're going to move on to Lisa and Connor from Hempstead NC Oyster Company. I think they're going to tag team this.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Alyssa McNair, and this is my husband, Connor, and we own NC Oyster Company. It's in Surf City, Topsail area, North Carolina. We have been growing oysters for the last 7 years. It's not letting me switch to the next one.
Yeah, the green.
Oh, shoot.
There.
So we grow the Dukes and the Divine Pines of Topsail. The Divine Pines are our green-gilled oyster when we get them, but yeah.
You might have to point it over there.
Is that what you need, Elisa?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, on the previous slide, as you can tell, we're suspended longline farmers is pretty much the only good part about that. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. That's our farm. It's in Surf City area, Hampstead, and yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah.
So we are situated so we own a good bit of land all the way down towards the water, but we originally just decided to start with our processing facility, the Oyster Barn. Your vision of all that.
Yeah, we have 7 acres on the water there. So initially, we just wanted to start off with this oyster barn, and we were going to build a retail stand down by the water. And then we actually secured all these loans in 2020, right before the world ended. So that put a big stop on getting things done down by the water. We do have the land cleared down there, but we had to kind of go in hard on our processing facility and kind of feel out whether we could just continue our plan on doing some type of food service in this facility, and really just based off of how much catering we were doing ahead of time. We've just been catering since the get-go, and like everybody has said here, we've been doing a lot of pop-ups with businesses and cargo district and stuff like that that are really, great places in Wilmington to get our name out there, and people just kept asking us when we were gonna do something. So by the time we had something to operate out of, we felt like we just had to go for it.
And this is what it looks like from an overhead view. So you can see the road towards the bottom right. And so our goal was to do, exactly like Hog Island and Hama Hama are doing, just have a really awesome shucking, pretty much you shuck your own oysters, grab a beer, that whole thing down on the water. We always saw ourselves being like a North Carolina farm stand. Like we really love that culture, and we really wanted to like show people our pride and everything that we do. We started out catering just the same. We really specialize in doing cocktail hours at weddings. We work a lot with chefs at events as well, and yeah, just love that communication between us and the public to be able to show them what we do and see everybody's faces when, you know, you spend 2 years growing something and you get that feedback. So just like Connor mentioned before, COVID really taught us that you could not just sell to wholesalers as a farm, because things like that can happen and you have to have other routes to be able to sell your stuff. So we always worked at a farmer's market, and we always wanted to diversify our sales to be able to, you know, if anything ever happened, survive as a farm. So we started with doing a Friday shuck your own at the barn because we had no food permitting, we didn't have our alcohol permitting, and it really took off. People would come during us working, processing at the barn, just grab a picnic table, grab a knife, we would sell them a dozen oysters, and they loved it. So
You got it.
we eventually started applying for these permits. So we applied for our ABC permit. We built this little bar, this little bar on our site next to the Oyster barn. And that food trailer you can see, we actually just borrowed from a restaurant. So we didn't even have a kitchen or anything. We were just kind of rolling with the punches of it all. We decided we were going to throw like a grand opening, so we invited the town council to come and do a ribbon cutting ceremony, and it was a really awesome turnout. People just were so pumped to have something like this in the area and to be able to like come and show that same type of pride. So it was a really awesome way for getting people in the door to really show them what farming oysters looks like, and inviting them into that space to be able to see, you know, how much care we take, and not only this processing facility, but our oysters as well. We had some fun along the way. We love to support all the local fishermen. So all the shrimp we get from Davis Shrimp, we drive there ourselves and pick it up once a week. All the fish we get from the local mongers, and we love ordering like North Carolina caviar and all.
Yeah, it's a really great space for us in Topsail. Like 93% of all of our seafood is exported. There's not a single spot that actually serves local shrimp. So once people found out that what we were doing was like, hey, it's a $20 plate of shrimp, but it's from here, and that really took off for everybody. And like Alyssa said, we just really enjoy serving food and being able to get our creativity out there.
It was also a good way for us to show other businesses in the area, look, like you can be a sustainable business and like you can actually survive. So we just wanted to be good role models. Like we have our own composting company. Everything that we serve our food in is compostable, and we're just really trying to like set a good example for the community. And we also love to give our farmers the opportunity to make some extra money on the weekend shucking oysters. It really teaches them, you know, like being able to see the inside of the oyster like 100 times over is a really awesome learning lesson too. And then we get to like the disadvantages of all this. So you are starting a whole nother business, obviously. I think farming and the food industry are probably two of the hardest things that you can do. So doing both of those at the same time when, you know, neither of us studied business, so we're just like trying to figure all this out on our own. It was definitely financially stressful. You're in the customer service industry, you're in the, you know, service industry, so you're dealing with a lot of people and a lot of opinions. It's a lot of extra liability insurance, and Connor and I basically farm, I mean, all of our guys, everybody, we all farmed and we all worked this food service. We're just trying to get it rolling and off the ground. We were not expecting for it to take off as much as it did. This was a 4th of July event we had, and we got absolutely slammed. So it was definitely a success in that side of things. But yeah, we also had some really cool like events that we can do every year, like St. Patrick's Day event, like holiday events, just to really hit on that. And then we hosted Julie Chu at the barn for kind of like a overview of Oyster Master Guild, and we were able to invite all of our local chefs to the barn to work and learn with Julie, and then we actually hosted a separate public class too, just for whoever wanted to come learn. So we were really excited because we were having some issues with our local chefs and shucking and all that. So we were able to like sit everybody down and try to go over that. Do you have anything else to say?
One thing for the disadvantages that I think is really important to push out there is that we have so much respect for everybody that runs a restaurant around here, and like the margins are slim to none. Like that, do some research on serving food is pretty hard, but for us, it was more about creating another wholesale. We just wholesale to ourselves at this normal price that we have, and it gets rid of an extra 10 to 20 bags a week, and I don't have to package them and do any of that type of stuff. So when we think about it like separately, like for us, we separate those two businesses, even though they're underneath this same business, to really figure out what they're making. But I just think it's an important point to make, that you're going for a wholesale to yourself.
One last thing to kind of note is not only did we do the food service, but it does kind of the barn serves as a venue almost for events and stuff like that. So we actually just started getting into hosting events at the barn where honestly couple entrepreneurs can come, and we all like get together, learn, talk, set goals for the year. Like, we're trying to really get our community involved and support everybody in that way. But we were just super excited to be able to serve super awesome, fresh, local food this summer, and we love food, so this was really exciting for us, and got all our local breweries to be able to drop off to, and yeah, it was fun. Will we keep doing it? Absolutely, but
Does it make money? We don't know.
Does it make money? We don't really know yet.
Thank you, that was great. So we're gonna move on to Mike Congrove. He's the one without a ball cap on. All right.
Yeah, hi guys. I run an oyster hatchery down in Virginia, and we took the somewhat unexpected or unorthodox step of connecting ourselves to consumers as well, kind of in the similar vein of what NC has done, and guys on the West Coast, the Island Creeks, Hog Island, Hama of the world. And we did this for the purpose of building support around aquaculture. So we've had a little bit of pushback in Virginia over the last several years. And we think it's critically important to do a very good job on educating the public on what aquaculture is, and creating a bit of a firewall around some of these groups that are getting leases and doing what we do more difficult. And we think building grassroots support through getting people to come eat oysters is probably the best way to do that. So that's our hatchery. We're at an old wharf on Gwen's Island, and if you see those little umbrellas, that used to be our parking lot. That's where we set up our little oyster eatery. So we've definitely upscaled the space, or better utilizing the space rather than using it for parking. Our bread and butter is production. We produce over 100 million seed each year that gets sold up and down the East Coast. And for 12, 13 years of our 15-year life, that's what we did. We were kind of behind the scenes. Most people in our county didn't even know we existed. We were a wholesaler working with farms. And after kind of a pretty high-profile protest of a floating lease in our haven, it was kind of the push we needed to get into the public space and kind of defend our industry, defend our customers, defend the farmers that are growing the oysters that we're producing. Because if we don't have you guys growing oysters, then we don't get to do what we do, making oysters. So we kind of expanded the company a few years ago from just strictly production to also including technology and advocacy. I'm going to talk about our oyster eatery mostly today, but we also have a technology side where we've kind of formalized an R&D department that brings in money, but it's meant to be net neutral. That money is all applied to research for trying to build a better mousetrap or for our hatchery, or working on building out systems for other people to use. And then on the advocacy side of things, building that community, educating the public, and garnering support for aquaculture are the main goals of this, our OSH 2.0 here. And so it's not necessarily intuitive that a hatchery would get into the consumer side of things, but aquaculture has a great story to tell, and so we decided we would just tell it. We don't want to be in your world. Like, we have been intentional about remaining an independent hatchery. We don't want to be a competitor of yours, and so we're just a hatchery selling seed. We're on two opposite spectrums, or sides of the spectrum from the consumer, but if we bend that around into a circle, we're kind of right next door. And so the idea was to bring consumers into the hatchery, show them what we do there, how oysters are made, and leverage what we had in the hatchery to educate people. And so we got a little grant from COA, which is hosted by the Chesapeake Bay Foundation in Virginia, to start these tours. Basically, we would walk them through the hatchery. They'd get a 30-minute in-depth tour, 40-minute in-depth tour of the hatchery, come back out and get a little oyster tasting, and we would just talk to them about aquaculture and why it's important. That was pretty well received. We had about 200 attendees, ate about 2,500 oysters, and because it was so well received and because people said you should keep doing this, we decided to try to find a way how we could do this in a more economically feasible way. That is, can we come up with an advocacy side of the business that kind of was self-supporting, so it could pay for those efforts rather than, taking a toll on our operational budget. So just a quick couple of graphs showing the top and bottom there, showing people's understanding of oyster culture. So I think it goes 1 to 5. That green bar on the top graph showing that people did not have much knowledge. I think it goes from no knowledge to 5 is ready to start your own farm. I can't read it, sorry. And I made this talk a little while ago, so I'm recycling it. But anyway, there's a big movement in increase in understanding from before and after the tour. And then people just really enjoyed the experience. So rate your overall experience was really well received. And so kind of the next step was moving into a food truck where we could actually get a menu going, have offerings other than oysters, just a couple, but also kind of upscaled oyster things, so like oyster sandwiches and not just selling roasted oysters, which we were doing previously. This also went relatively well for a first year. Kind of like what these guys to my left were saying, it's not without its complications. That includes zoning, permitting, finances, insurance, the whole bit. But I think it's definitely an effort worth doing because of that outreach component of doing it. Anyway, so we went from a few hundred or 2,500 oysters to 18,000 oysters, so that's not a bad increase. And just for fun here, my graph didn't quite translate there, but the number one selling item for the season was fried oyster tacos, to the tune of not quite 900 tacos served. So anyway, I don't get my umbrellas in the sun either, but yeah, come visit us if you guys find yourself down in Virginia. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. All right, we're going to finish up with Adam, and Hama Hama is a 6th-generation family-run business. So yeah, they've had a little bit of time to figure this out.
Yeah, well, hello everybody. My name's Adam. I work for the Hama Hama Company. It's a family business. We are located in Washington State on Hood Canal, about, 30 miles as a seagull flies west of Seattle. And we have farms up and down the Sound, grow a few species of oysters and clams, and fill around with geoducks. Here's an early drone shot from the 80s of our facility, maybe late 70s. I had a cousin, quite sophisticated at the time. And I think what you want to note there is that that big field at the north end that turned into one of our most valuable resources. This panel's covered a lot of things. I'm going to kind of write my playbook around that, but basically, as I was flying out here yesterday, it occurred to me that the reason why we have an oyster farm is, that in and of itself was sort of an alternative revenue stream. We were a logging company, and the Pacific oyster had been introduced around 1900, and it was starting to take hold in the bay, and the woods were pretty depleted. The depression was hard. I grew up in that mindset where the only way to make money on the farm was not to spend it, right? Like trade show guys hate that, but that was kind of the mentality from the Depression. So my grandpa Bart started a little oyster business, and after a while, folks started knocking on the door. We saw a pile of shells there, and hey, where can we buy these oysters? And that's basically why we have a retail store. And I think you can see where this is going. We have a restaurant basically following the same parallel, right? So we're located, I can speak about what's worked for us in terms of alternative revenue streams. We like to think of ourselves as a farm first. And as the NC folks were saying, I don't think I would recommend anybody start a restaurant. I wouldn't recommend anybody to start a hatchery, but people do it, and welcome to try whatever you want to try. But I think what's allowed things to work for us is sort of the relationship that the farm has, and these panelists have talked about that, with our wholesale operation, which is we started an online store in 2006. We're selling directly to chefs. If it's a Friday and the wholesale business hasn't sold some product, we can hold on to it and ship it to, where's Sean Baio from Hog Island? We'll ship it to him next Tuesday. I'm just kidding. That stuff will be sold like in our retail store that weekend. And maybe if it doesn't sell there, it goes to the restaurant. So anyway, here's some more farm shots, clam crew. We're still digging clams by hand. If we were doing it any differently, I'd probably be on the farm innovator panel, not sitting with these guys. Some more shots, nothing personal, guys. Just trying to wake the crew up here, I get it. I got NOLA last night too. So, I guess really this presentation was put together by my sister, and I'm having a hard time with the flow. She's the one that should be speaking right now because she's responsible for, most of the rad parties we throw. I kind of handle the after parties. But so, she and I both grew up working on the family farm, and after college she came back and started running the retail store. And similar to what we've seen in terrestrial agriculture, farm days are a thing. So we started having these farm days, and I think 2 people showed up to the first one. I don't know how much time I have. I'm going to flip through these things. But they built over time. The other thing that worked for us that actually helped to put us on the map in Seattle, because we weren't really well known in Seattle, was the farmers markets. Now, we never made money in any of the farmers markets. So it's important to talk about scale. We're a small oyster in a big bag, or a big oyster in a small bag, however you want to look at it. But if I have to hire somebody to grow the oyster, plant the oyster, pick the oyster, barge the oyster, pack it, drive it into Seattle, somehow that never penciled out. A smaller company might make good money anyway. But what it did do for us is we got some rad employees out of it, like Lauren McCool here. Oyster Gal at Work's her Instagram handle. It's hard not to talk to people or refer to them at their Instagram handles these days. But, she told people about the farm, and then they showed up. And we did these oyster ramas. So we have an intertidal farm, getting people out on the beach, advocacy, as these folks were talking about, really just creating core positive experiences with shellfish, digging shellfish. This was a shuckathlon event. We did it for about 10 years. I think it must have been Easter. And, they pick a dozen oysters, shuck them, dig a couple pounds of clams, bag them up, and kids love crabs, so it's always a highlight of that event, which I think ran right up till the pandemic. It also got friends to visit, like Mr. Rackley and Rowan. We have a party, invite your friends. Obviously, you put them to work. Whatever, polar plunge. I guess the key thing for a lot of us, back to the synergy of the various revenue channels. We did all these things, and it's mostly just to support our core businesses, which now are wholesale, online store, obviously the retail operations and the restaurant. So, we never made money on the Oyster Rama. We never made money on the polar plunge, but, it was always, I built a floating wooden sauna to come visit. It's pretty cool. That wouldn't have happened. Banjo Rama, these guys rock. Getting people out to the farm. Nobody needs to be busier on their busy days, right? It's all about making the shoulder seasons busier, slow seasons busier. So farm dinners. That's it's beautiful. It's outstanding in the field. Jim Denovan and his band of gypsies show up. They pay you give you 6 tickets and you spend 2 days schlepping their gear around, but it's a good time. Yeah, farm dinners, wild events. This was a dinner last summer. Chef Jeremy Sewell, I think Aaron and Stacy Franklin. It was a fundraiser for the Girl Scouts. And anyway, they're always fun. Maybe you don't make any money, but you're working with great people and building connections. And hey, if work can be fun, that's what it's about. So yet to materialize, catering, we can't do that. We can't even cater our own dinner at our own place because our restaurant's so busy and, staffing and this and that. But regular farm tours, I guess, some other things here. So this is along the lines of like what's hard to make work. The successes, the farm store, which came about from people stopping in and talking to Lorraine and asking her to sell her some shucked oysters. And online store, we got that started with a satellite internet connection, maybe dial-up. There's the old store, new store. Classes, these have been pretty successful. That's my sister Alyssa, brings people out to the farm on slow weekends. They buy a t-shirt, kind of like they're saying, exit the gift shop. Cheese boards are cheap. So this was the start of our restaurant. I think back in 2014, we built that building. The family wasn't on the same page with regards to starting a restaurant. So we basically just started with a grill and a raw bar, and it's grown to where, on Saturday we'll have 400 people come through. Pretty busy. Yeah, weather's an issue, but with the 3 businesses, 4 with the online store sitting there, on when it gets slow for the brick and mortar operations, our online store is picking up, and so it's really complementary, and I guess that's kind of what we're trying to make work. So yeah, just flipping through some shots. We don't really have any good shots of the restaurant, which is funny. There's a lot on Instagram, I guess. Yeah, swag. This was kind of funny. Yeah, this was the year that we sold just as much alcohol and swag as clams. It was not something I should be proud of. Throwing parties, yep, online stuff, a little CSA. I think Justin Stang came up with this, and it's been fun. It's fun for the crew. It gets us out into the woods, foraging for matsutakis, and trying to keep people coming back to shellfish and that sort of thing. So, cool. Yep.
Yeah. All right, we definitely have time for questions.
Anybody have any questions?
I'm curious about the price of oysters. Where do y'all think it is going in the future? Because with all the production that's increasing.
The price to customers, like the farm gate price, or the price to consumers, or all of the above?
I think price to the grower, I think you were thinking, right? A supply?
I don't know. I first came out here in 2014. Beth and Dr. Oyster invited me out. We went down to Alabama and toured Murder Point, and this was just getting going. I come here now and see all the young faces, and we've seen the same thing on the West Coast. It was the East Coast maybe 20 years ago, and I think the deal is that the ocean's running out of fish, and oysters are good protein, and So it's an ongoing conversation. I don't think we've hit that threshold yet. I'm interested to hear what people say.
I feel that despite, we've been around for 7 years, and despite the huge amount of influx of farm oysters in the last 3 years in particular, we're still charging pretty much whatever we can charge. Right now the price is pretty good for oysters. I don't think that's going to be the same in a longer time, but it's not going to be up to the fact that there's too many oysters for production. That's just going to be the ebbs and flow in the economy. The COVID made everybody spend whatever they wanted on eating out, and now people are traveling again, so restaurants are a little slow, and we'll just get the feedback from that and go with it. Yeah.
All right, I'll throw you a question, because I heard from a couple of you not making money doing it. And so, but I also heard about telling your story and advocacy. So is it worth essentially running an alternative income stream that's a break even, does that help your bottom line, your social license enough to make it worth it?
I'll start off by saying yes, I definitely think it's worth it. And I think toward price point too, I think one thing that we as a national industry need to be concerned about is growing oyster eaters, just the number of people eating oysters. And I think these types of efforts do that. I know for a fact that we introduced a lot of people to eating oysters at our hatchery tours, and I think that's critically important. And as those people learn that they want to eat oysters, they're going to bring their friends over and feed them oysters. And having that grassroots increase in oyster eaters in general is important to keep prices up as the industry increases.
I would say that we definitely increased our revenue with the catering company. You have your onset of expenses, but that stuff you can use over and over and over again. And then one thing is you want to surround yourself and have a good crew. I'm fortunate enough to have a couple folks that usually drop everything to come do these events because it's fun and they love it. But there's other people that I could rope in as well. The one thing is these people can really shuck, and they shuck a really beautiful oyster, and presentation is everything. But one thing that we have is the market isn't saturated, so in our area. So we're basically the only one, There is another guy out of Panama City who travels all over the place, but his is a real dog and pony show. I mean, he, lasers, smoke screens, loud music, chimes, the whole shebang. Where ours is a little bit, more low key and more professional. So to that point, I mean, the catering, it's self-sustaining and we make money on it.
I was really interested to see that your top seller was the oyster tacos and that your raw oysters were the least, because for us it was our raw oysters were our top seller by miles. So I would be interested to hear too from chefs to see if that's the same at y'all's spots. But yeah, for us it was just awesome to be able to, teach people what an oyster on a plate should look like and kind of what you should be demanding. And yeah.
Let's try Matt. That better? Yes. For those of you who have shuck your own events, how concerned are you with handing a sharp knife and sharp shells to people that have never done it before?
We give everybody a lesson first.
You pretty much end up opening all of them. It's just like, that's the health code thing. But you're teaching people. Like, you're giving them an undeniable experience. I have so many people that come and eat at the food truck all the time that they're like, I came here years ago and and I don't remember this, of course, and they were like, Connor, you dropped everything you were doing and pulled up to my table and your full get up and you taught us all how to shuck oysters, and then you just opened them all for us. But you did that, and they come back every week and they tell everybody about their favorite oysters and all that type of stuff. So that's a huge plus. But to what Bill was saying, I was feeling on top of the world 2 months ago, and now I've had a bad public hearing. So we'll see if that works out.
Yeah, I was thinking that the title of this panel should have been "Shuck Around and Find Out." With these alternate revenue streams, we've had a different experience with the U-Shucks. We talked about it for years. We were, concerned that folks would stab themselves, knives would walk off, all the above. But in 2022 or one, we just got so busy with our restaurant that we had to start basically what we call a stump bar, like a walk-up spot, and grilled cheese, a couple soups, clam chowder, pint beers, and then over there, the folks that are, and we started doing, we actually had a chef working, I called him the U-Chef, because he was like, you shuck buckets, you crack crab, everything was about the guests doing it themselves. And besides the knives walking out, we haven't had too much blood on the table. It's been remarkably successful. I think it's just people's phones and attitude towards, being culinary curious that's really helped. There are some things that my phone's going to try to market me that would make it easier. I don't know if you guys have seen those like shucking pedestals and stuff, but yeah, we do try to get them like, a blue pool or a summer blue or an oyster that's a little bit more consistent, a little easier to shuck.
They pretty much just, at the end of the day, learn that they don't really want to do it from themselves anyways. So.
But again, that's two different experiences. I think we were doing 200 dozen U-shucks a week last summer. I know, at like, $20 a dozen, so.
We got another question?
One last,
You should be on.
one last question. You can hear. Which oyster knife do y'all recommend? Because I've got a dozen of them, and I had one with a curved tip years ago, and I loved it, and the tip broke off. But so, any particular oyster knives?
Keep them all. I mean, I certainly find that different knives work better for different oysters. So, like at our place, we served the hook at the hatchery that we called the food truck was we would have a different one of our customers' oysters on the menu each week. So we were rotating through farms. So we got to see a lot of different oysters come through, which, I mean, I eat a lot of oysters, but it was cool to see a different one each week. And I probably used 5 different knives, over the course of the season, depending on what worked best for the oyster we had at the time.
All right, I want y'all to give a good hand for all these folks that shared their experience.